The other day, I couldn't stop thinking about the 2019 NHL draft. So today, I want to go through a redraft from each round of the Islanders selections to see who would stay as of today and who would go. Hit that subscribe button, do not miss a video. We're marching our way to 1,000. We're only at 500 or just over 500, but we're getting there day after day. Also, go to Twitter, follow at TLOMitch. That's me. Don't miss any breaking information about Islanders prospects I've yet to cover on the channel. And yes, I will use the post feature, but I'm just worried that they're going to take it away at some point, so I don't want to rely on it too much, just in case they do take it away. Today, what I want to do is go through round by round of draft picks for the Islanders in the 2019 NHL draft. Should the player they have taken stay in the system in this hypothetical situation, or is there someone that the Islanders probably should have picked over this player? So I just want to make a few things clear here when it comes to the redraft and some of the rules that I'm working with internally. I'm not going to go wildly off board. I'm not going to say with the second round pick, the Islanders should have taken this guy who went in the third because he's so much better. No, I'm going to stick to the round itself, right? So anyone who's available when the Islanders selected their pick, that's who I'm going with. I'm not going to assume that they're going wildly off board, even though they kind of did so with Simon Holmstrom. I'm also going to take a player who's at the same position. Now, what I mean by that is I'm not going to stick to left wings only or right wings only. I'm going to stick to forwards, defense, and goalie. They didn't take a goalie, so I'm not going to go there. But I'm not going to take a goalie instead of a forward or a defense instead of a forward. I'm going to keep it to the same position because it's clear that that's what the Islanders were going into that draft trying to do, and I'm going to try to mimic that as well. So let's start at the very first round because all of you are going to say, yes, there's a player that the Islanders should have taken over the guy they did take. So as we know, the Islanders took Simon Holmstrom with the 23rd overall pick at the 2019 NHL draft. And maybe there's a debate over what player they should have taken, but the very next player selected, Philip Tomasino by Nashville, probably should have been the player the Islanders took. Maybe you're a Connor McMichael guy or fan, but like honestly, it really comes down to Philip Tomasino. What I did to compare them, and honestly, you shouldn't have to do this, or you don't need to do this comparison, but it's going to be useful throughout this video, is looking at the NHLE for the player the Islanders did pick, and maybe a player that the Islanders should have picked. And in this case, it's clear as day that they should have taken Philip Tomasino. Just look at the NHLE of year over year comparatively. For Simon Holmstrom, it doesn't get over 8, and that's this year. That's the best one so far. Whereas Philip Tomasino, it's at 61.5 NHLE, and that's because he has 3 points in 4 NHL games. That's right, he's already playing at the NHL level.
His first, a moment he'll will never forget. His parents, Manny and Shannon Tomasino, in the house to witness Phil Tomasino's first.
And of course, Nashville and the Islanders are different places in their kind of cycle. But still, like, if the Islanders had Philip Tomasino, they probably don't need to get Zach Parise necessarily. Not to say that Zach Parise has been a problem, but you've already got an internal option necessarily to play on that third line. And yes, Tomasino is the center, but, you know, you can always start him, throw him on the wing. That's what happens when you get to the higher levels. But it's clear here as day, like I said, that the Islanders should have taken Philip Tomasino over Simon Holmstrom. In the second round, the New York Islanders selected Samuel Bolduc with the 57th overall draft. And honestly, there's no problem with this pick. I'm sure some of these other players, Carl Henriksson and Hunter Jones, are fine players. But Samuel Bolduc is already doing well. He's already established himself as a solid pro at the AHL level. And now it's to see, can he take that next step to become a solid NHL defenseman? And it takes time for defensemen, right? It's a little bit slower progress because they play so many minutes and they're relied on for a lot more than just drive forward the play, which is me generalizing a forward's job, but there's a reason why it takes longer for defensemen to develop versus forwards. And so there's no problem with this pick. I would make this pick 10 times out of 10 and twice on Saturday. The Islanders didn't have a third and fourth round pick in 2019. The third round pick went to Edmonton in the Brandon Davidson trade. Thank God! And the fourth round pick went to Calgary in the Travis Hamonic trade, which worked out pretty well for the Islanders because they got Noah Dobson, they got Samuel Bolduc, and Ruslan Ishakov. So things worked out pretty well for the Islanders on that bit. In the fifth round, the New York Islanders selected Reese Newkirk with the 147th overall pick. And I really couldn't find anyone that stood out to say we should have taken that player instead. Right? I focused on Joshua Noedler, but when you look at his NHLE, and I'm pointing to my monitor, which is kind of mirror reversed on the video here for you, but the NHLE for Noedler doesn't look anywhere near as good as it does for Reese Newkirk. And yes, you can look at that and say, well, this 2021-22 is flat zero for Newkirk. Newkirk's playing at the AHL, whereas Noedler is not. So that's kind of a bonus there. I believe Noedler is supposed to be playing at the ECHL level and has yet to play. So big bonus there. But you also look at the NHLE for the first 2 years since being drafted. 13-point NHLE, 12-point NHLE, way over what Josh Noedler has. In the 6th round, the New York Islanders selected center Felix Bibeau with the 178th overall pick. And he's had a decent run, right? You look at his NHLE here, 10, 10-6, 12 this year. So far, so good for him at the ECHL level. So that's great. He's not signed to an NHL contract now, but still, regardless, doesn't really matter. But then you look at the competition around him and you go, Blake Murray, another center, taken 183rd. His numbers look pretty good, but hasn't really done anything just yet this year, so that's not great. And then you look at Kevin Wall, and his numbers look pretty good playing for Penn State. So you can argue that maybe the Islanders should have taken Kevin Wall over Felix Bibeau, and I think you'd have a pretty strong case of that just by looking year over year of his NHLE. It is trending in a better direction than it does for Felix Bibeau. The final round, the 7th round, the Islanders took Cole Koski, 209th overall. And this is another situation where the very next player available, or selected I should say, should have been the guy the Islanders took. Just like in the 1st round with Simon Holmstrom and Philip Tomasino, same situation in the 7th round with Cole Koski and Juuso Parssinen. Parssinen is just wildly better than Cole Koski when you just look at NHLE. The 36 is what he's at right now. 36 NHL points is what he's basically putting up in the Liga. Whereas Cole Koski is at 6.3, rounded up to 6.4. It's not even rounding up to 7. There's a big difference there in terms of talent. And yes, when you look at Cole Koski's first post-draft year, that's 1920, he has a better NHLE than Juuso Parssinen does. But you have to consider that Cole Koski at this point is an overager playing in the juniors, whereas Juuso Parssinen is a 18-year-old player playing against men in the Liga level. And they're basically neck and neck. But when Cole Koski makes that jump to the pros, look at how that drops, right? He goes from 15 to 9 to 6, whereas Juuso Parssinen just keeps on getting better. And yes, you can say, well, he's playing for a pretty good TPS squad. Sure, but they lost quite a few players. Their points leader from last year, Josh Kessner, is gone. Juuso Parssinen, second in team in points, is gone to the Rangers or their AHL affiliate. Russ Nishkakov, 4th in points, also gone. You're left with Juuso Parssinen kind of pulling up the slack, and he's doing the thing. This is a player the Islanders should have definitely taken in the 7th round, and they got Cole Koski instead. No disrespect to Cole Koski. He's a fine player. But when you see the difference, specifically one pick later, you're going, oh, what could have been? Using hindsight, the Islanders should have left the 2019 draft with Philip Tomasino, Samuel Bolduc, Reese Newkirk, Kevin Wall, and Juuso Parssinen. There could have been so many hits there, and most of those guys were right there, specifically Tomasino and Juuso Parssinen. Right there. Even if everything else remains the same, that is a huge draft for the Islanders. Sure enough, they still have Simon Holmstrom, who could do better and may very well. They've got Samuel Bolduc, who's great, and they got Reese Newkirk, who's pretty good. But it could have been so much better. Thank you for following. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. And if you have, thank you, thank you, thank you.